Julia Holter is a chamber pop, Baroque pop musician who has been turning a lot of heads, I would say, this decade in this genre of music, as she has become this critically acclaimed artist in the genre and has crafted some albums people highly regard for this decade. When I say people, I do include myself, because I think Julia Holter is phenomenal, to be honest. I think she's had a great run of albums. I actually only recently got to listen to Ecstasis, and I would say that's a huge highlight for 2012, so it's a shame I didn't really include that on my 2012 list, but I absolutely would now. Also, Loud City Song is only getting better as time goes along. That is a fantastic, beautiful release from her. And then I would say she peaked in 2015 with Have You In My Wilderness, an album that only fell short to probably the best album of the decade, To Pimp a Butterfly, in 2015. It's a real shame, because I would probably have put that as my album of the year any other year, to be honest. Just this wonderful release, just an absolute orgasmic blend of musicianship, everything that was crafted on that album, the jazz instrumentation, the Baroque pop instrumentation, her vocals, the songwriting, everything I just found to be glorious. And so going into Aviary, I guess I was just expecting the best, because it's Julia Holter at this point. She's just creating great music, I think, so I would only expect something great again. One thing people were talking about though was that it is a 90-minute album. It's a gargantuan epic that perhaps wouldn't justify its runtime, or perhaps there may be some filler moments for the sound that she's going for. So I guess I would have to answer that question right now. Was it a little over long, or did it justify its runtime? Well, I think she has crafted something extremely avant-garde and extremely worthwhile, because this is quite the album, isn't it? Holy shit. She certainly strays away from the typical sounds that she's been playing with on her previous releases. This certainly, once again, is like a new level for her. She's not really copy and pasting the same ideas on every album. This time around, she aims for something bigger and more expansive. The opening track, Turn the Light On, is the most interesting type of instrumentation I think she's ever been over. It's something I was just completely caught off guard by the first time I heard it, and even with subsequent listens, I'm in awe of this track. This ever-growing wall of sound is quite dizzying, but at the same time, her vocals just layered over this type of music is once again just absolutely beautiful. But it just creates this weird introduction to this album that I was confused by, I was perplexed by. Just from that moment I was like, yeah, this is going to be something special, because it sounds like nothing that you could really point to in the modern day and say, oh yeah, Julia Holter sounds like this, because I couldn't really say any other artists or albums that this sounds like, to be honest. I just feel like she's honed in this completely new style for herself that is nothing like what she's done before, and everything she's done has kind of collided together to create this really experimental, weird journey. In the second track, which is a bit more like, I guess, traditional in the sense of chamber pop, she's still singing over this track in quite an off-kilter way, and the beat kind of comes in, it's like beep 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 beep, like it just sounds really strange but somehow works. I just feel like every track on this album that hits that climax is just so worth the wait. Like, you could sit through like 6 minutes of one track, and while it finally gets to that big moment, you're just like, yes, yes, everything. Voce, Simul, I think would be how you say it, I'm not entirely sure, but this is a good example of that, where it's like really eerie and quite unsettling at the start, and then as the track goes on, the like orchestration kind of builds up, and she's like, Voce, 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 Voce. It's a really weird and dreary sort of climax, but yeah, it's still feels like I was waiting for something that I didn't know was ever going to come, and I'm still satisfied with what I ended up with. Just to kind of get a negative out of the way though, I would say the only moment on this album where I'm not as fully satisfied with what the end result was is the track Chaetius. I just think this track hits a bit of a lull, to be honest. Like, there's this spoken word little piece, and there is quite a bit of spoken word on this album, but I just feel like this is the one time where I'm just kind of like sat waiting for something, and the end result isn't quite as sort of pleasing to the ears as it possibly could have been. I would say there are a couple of moments like this on the album, however, where the music just kind of drifts away. Like, I feel like it kind of gets sunk into the beautiful sounds a little bit too much, to the point where nothing is going on. I don't really know how to explain it, but like, it just kind of gets carried away with itself at times, and my attention just drifts away ever so slightly. It's only a couple of times on the album, but I do think it's something worth bringing up. I did really want to come into this review and be like, this album is flawless, this album is perfection, but I can't really say that, because the amount of listens I've given it at this point, I can safely say that there are just a couple of times I'm just not as engaged as other tracks, like a track like Voce Simul, for example, as I've already mentioned. But to be fair, you've got to give Julie Holter the benefit of the doubt here, because a 90-minute album, I mean, even the best artists don't carry on the quality of music for that length of time, so to expect that from Julie Holter would be a bit silly as well. But I just think it's just important to bring up. In the dead center of this album, we have the I Shall Love Too, though, which is perhaps the most Julie Holter sounding song, because this just has those wonderful vocal harmonies across this track that she's known for at this point. Those little vocal melodies that she does that are just so cute and just so warm. Those little I would say it's this album's version of Feel You, in the sense that had that sort of similar charm to it with the ooh. Of course, this was also the lead single, and yeah, she just knows how to do this, doesn't she? I don't know how she does it with those little isms that are just so always puts a smile on my face every time I hear this track. Easily gonna be a big track of the year when it comes to like compiling my list, easily, because the way it sort of again climaxes into the I shall love, just everything comes together, and I just don't know how it sounds the way it does, but she just has a way of doing this, and it is absolutely wonderful. Interestingly as well, later on in the album, the penultimate track is I Shall Love 1, which is quite interesting how that's come after the second one. I'm not entirely sure if there's some kind of link there, but this track sort of takes that sort of like vocal melody and like pushes it beyond its limits over this really like chaotic instrumental. It sounds actually very interesting to listen to, because of how everything sort of comes together and how she manipulates the song into sounding something very different. Words I Heard was the other single for this album, and again it follows a very whimsical sound for Julia Holter, perhaps very familiar of her previous work. I love the way the strings and everything comes together on this track. It's absolutely wonderful, but I can't really say it's anything new for her at this point, perhaps. Like, I think this is quite a I guess similar sound for what we've heard before, but it's one of those things that's like it's just done so well that you can't really complain about it, even if it is something that you've heard before. Like, it's just everything that makes her music so good. I do love the way her vocals echo on this track though. It's again quite off kilter, the way like it kind of comes in just like and then it kind of like fades away a little bit, and then it comes in again. It's just really wonderful to listen to. Another huge highlight for this album for me would be Led You to You. Not entirely sure how you would say it, but this track starts off with this wonderful piano melody. It's so beautiful to listen to, and then about like 2 minutes into the track, suddenly this beat starts creeping in, and it becomes like this little dance tune. Again, it's like one of those moments that just takes you by surprise, because you just don't know where this album is going most of the time. Even like 5 or 6 listens in, I'm like still like shocked when certain things come about that I just somehow don't expect. But I suppose that's the beauty of having an album that's 15 tracks long at 90 minutes, because every listen you're gonna pick up something different to what you remembered before. I do think, aside from the fact this is more avant-garde and experimental than our other stuff, that is a one factor that makes this album very different to her rest, because you know, you're picking up these little minor details every time. There's always something to focus on, whether it be the string section, whether it be the vocal harmonies, whether it be the, you know, everything going on. There's something to focus on each listen, which in itself gives this album a very different feel to, again, anything else within this style. I mean, I have always made comparisons to an artist like Nico with Julia Holter, but even still, Nico doesn't have an album anything like this. Why Sad Song closes the album in a very somber tone on this track. It's very, very eerie with the way it presents itself, and also the lyrics on this track as well. Lyrics for the most part on this album can be quite abstract, I would say. There's not really a way of reading into them quite a lot of the time, but you can sort of pick up this idea that Julia is in this eternal struggle with herself to sort of wonder what her purpose is and what the purpose of everything is. I think that can be found in the music as well at times, where like everything's sort of going all over the place, everything doesn't quite make sense. There are some explosive moments that just lead to these really chaotic climaxes and stuff like that. It's also explained as well about this album being like this way of how you deal with these struggles that you face. How do you behave when it comes to love and stuff like that. I think this final track closes things off by sort of questioning this idea: how exactly do you beg for forgiveness amidst all this madness and chaos, you know? Is a way to prove yourself as being a good person and learning from your mistakes? Do you just have to basically carry on in this chaotic madness while never feeling truly happy? One of the challenges I think that comes with this album is sort of reading into things and digesting what exactly it is she's saying, but I think it's one of those albums that will reveal itself over time. As you give it more listens, more things pop out to you, and more things start to make more sense, or perhaps it will never make sense, because I guess that might be what she's going for with this entire album. This entire album is essentially built around the idea that nothing really makes sense, and how do you make sense of the world? But it's interesting to sort of read into things, even as though it is quite abstract as it is. But yeah, this was quite the album. I mean, 90 minutes of Julie Holter did not fail me at all. I was not disappointed with this one bit. And yeah, I'm quite astounded by this one. I think the minor issues I mentioned still do stand with this album though. As great as it is, there are some moments that just falter slightly, and other than that, I would say nearly everything on this album is pretty fantastic, even if there are some tracks that pale, like they're just good, but it makes up for it by the next one being amazing. She's hitting it out of the park with every release, man. I think she can be in the conversation of best discographies of the decade. I mean, this is the 4th album on the trot where she has put out something truly great. I'm gonna go 8.5 on this one out of 10. It's very good, gonna be a highlight of the year, no doubt, and I will be seeing her live at the end of the year too, so that's gonna be pretty special. Let me know your thoughts on this album, if you have heard it, and anything you pulled out of this that I didn't mention that you would like to also mention. please let me know. That would be great. You know, I'm just one guy, really. You know, I'm sure there's someone out there that pulled out a better analysis of what this album means, so please comment and tell me, because that would be absolutely great. Subscribe to the channel for more reviews. Listen to this album if you haven't already, it's fantastic. Holter, Aviary. Ooh, have a good day.